Hi, Beth. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a chilly day here in Ashland, Ohio. Winter is well underway. I'm guessing it's a bit colder in Chicagoland.
It's getting chilly for sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited. People in our church have probably seen these flyers up around and in the newsletter. And the end of this month in November, we're starting an adult Sunday school class on your new book, Practicing Christian Doctrine. And so I was hoping to have a little interview today with you to encourage people on why maybe if they wouldn't initially be interested in seeing something like this, like, oh no, this is actually something really interesting that would benefit my walk with Christ. Um,
The most interesting thing of all. Thanks for using my book. Oh.
well, thank you, of course. And for those of you who don't know, Beth is my Doctor of Ministry advisor at Northern Seminary, and we've known each other since 2010, I think, when you were my freshman advisor at Wheaton.
That sounds right. Yeah. Time flies.
Time flies. So the first question I have for you is many of us think that doctrine is something disconnected from life. Yet your book is titled Practicing Christian Doctrine. For many of us, this seems like a paradox, but how are they connected?
Yeah. I think this word doctrine has gotten a bad kind of reputation. It sounds cold. It sounds purely academic, but it really just means teaching of the Christian faith, right? And those teachings are what give shape to the faith, what make us Christian and not random something else, right? And so they shape our lives in every way. I like to think of Christian teaching as sort of the skeleton on which our lives are the flesh, right? And it shapes who we are, it shapes what we can do, and it shapes us in faithfulness to the true God. So I find it terrifically exciting, and it's always my hope to convince other people that these things might actually matter for our lives. They sure matter for mine. Wow.
Absolutely. My next question is so thinking of my audience, the folks who sit in my pews every Sunday, the vast majority are people who have been Christians most, if not all, of their lives, which is a wonderful thing. But I'm wondering, how does this book offer something new to someone who has been a lifelong believer?
Yeah, that's such a fun question because I think um, when somebody who's known Christianity for a long time comes to a more formal investigation of Christian teaching, there's both a really beautiful familiarity there, like, oh yeah, I knew that. But maybe I didn't know how to say it that way, or I hadn't thought about this implication, right? So you've got that familiarity, but then there's also a newness and a strangeness because inevitably, right, we emphasize certain things over others which we never learned about, or our culture places a high value on one thing, and so we got a lot of that in church. But there are these other really interesting things that we didn't get, and so some people who teach theology, I think, want to think of it as something that will be totally new to people, but I have no interest in that at all. I want to see people connect it to the Jesus they've known a long time, the life of faith they've known a long time.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely. Next question. And you've already answered this in some ways, but often when people hear the word theology or doctrine, it can shut down the conversation immediately. And one of the things I really love about this book is how incredibly accessible it is.
Mm.
And I was wondering, could you speak a bit more to that writing style and the accessibility of it?
Yeah, that's definitely my goal. I don't know why I'm doing this or anyone's doing this if people can't understand each other. And so I'm pretty impatient with super technical, jargony writing that is difficult to understand. I also just love words. I love beautiful writing. And so, my hope is always that I can be a clear and beautiful writer. And I'm grateful when people find anything like that to be the case. But yeah, I mean, big picture, I if people can't understand me, I am ready to quit my job now. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then maybe a little personal question for people to get to know the author. I know you, and one thing I appreciate about your perspective is you're someone who's in a mainline denomination, the United Methodist Church, and you also have these deep evangelical roots, which I think mirrors well my audience, my congregation here. And I know you have a cat and you do theology posts. So let's share a little bit about your life and who you are for the folks.
Mm. Yeah, sorry, could you repeat that very last part, Hylden? Yeah.
Oh, I was saying, I know you have a cat who makes
Oh,
theology posts,
I
and
do have
I
a
bet
cat.
people would love to hear about your cat, Dwight.
I think you were turned away, but he poked his head through the screen early on here when we were talking. So you maybe caught a glimpse of Dwight, my theology cat. It just started as kind of a fun little thing, and now he posts pretty regularly on my social medias his theological observations, or I post about his theological pitfalls. I was not a cat person, but my son talked me into this cat and I fell in love with him. And I see that as a sort of sign of the surprising grace of God, right? We think we know who we are, not a cat person. And then something happens and new things unfold. So Dwight's my fluffy cat, and I have a lot of fun with him.
Wonderful. Well, just a reminder to everyone, we'll be starting our Sunday school class at the end of November, some Sunday, November 26th at 8:45 a.m. in the lounge, and looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for your time, Beth.
Thanks. I hope the book treats you well, and feel free to find me and Dwight online and tell us how it's going. So.
Absolutely.